Sunshine Pumper. Text the guys on the First Liberty Bank text line at 405-651-3439. And call your shot on the Riverwind Casino jackpot line at 405-329-9000.
Do it! Just do it!
Now, with Locked In, here's Parker Thune and Grayson Singleton.
Here we go now. It's a Wednesday here on Locked In. A little bit of a different flair today. Josh Helmer is here, sitting in for Grayson Singleton. Mr. Helmer, how are we?
Mr. Thune, good afternoon, my friend.
Always a pleasure to share the airwaves with you.
Likewise, my friend.
Is this hour 4 for you? I assume you had your regularly scheduled programming this morning?
Hour number 4.
Wow. I guess I got to do 4 hours today, too.
I'm so sorry. You're a heavy lifter today.
You know what? It's the summer. We all got to fill in for each other,
That's
don't
right.
we?
That is true.
We all got to chip in. Then once football season rolls around, don't really have much of a choice but to stay in a rhythm. Stay locked in. And fortunately, folks, as we sit here today on this fine Wednesday afternoon, we are but a week away from the beginning of fall camp at the illustrious University of Oklahoma. Next Wednesday is when the Sooners will hit the practice field for the first time in advance of their 2026 season, which, of course, begins the first Friday of September. Yes, Friday this year, as they open with UTEP at Owen Field. Now, as we get rolling today, the First Liberty Bank text line is always open to you if you want to chime in, offer your thoughts, comments, questions, opinions, whatever the case may be. Holler at us via the text line 405-651-3439. The show is brought to you today and every day by Dorsey Jones GMC in El Reno. Family owned and operated, GMC offers some of the most reliable trucks and SUVs on the road today. And the folks out there at Dorsey Jones, they're passionate, they're experienced, they're eager to help get you behind the wheel of a brand new GMC that suits your lifestyle. So head out to El Reno, check out what they got going on, thanks to our friends at Dorsey Jones. It is Florida Day. Am I correct in that?
That is
Josh,
correct.
That's team takeovers, they roll by so fast. I always have to double check. Okay, today is XYZ Day. It is Florida Day today.
It is Florida Day today.
That's what I planned on. Good to know. I wasn't off base on that. It is Florida Day as we count down to the season with SEC team takeovers. A little trip over my own tongue there. But SEC team, gosh, I can't say it, Josh. I can't say it. The SEC team takeover is brought to you by Norman Hyundai. Check them out at normanhyundai.com, servicing you and nothing else. Start your car buying journey anytime at Norman Hyundai and stop by their beautiful new facility on the Mile of Cars in Norman. True Sooner says, happy early birthday, Josh. How close are we?
Tomorrow's 36.
Very good. Very good. July 30th, eh?
July 30th.
That's good. You never have a birthday that conflicts with any football-related activities, do you?
It's nice.
That's kind of the dream.
One positive, no question.
Love it. Big 3-6.
Yep.
It's going to be a big year for you, isn't it?
It is for both you and I, and for this man right here. We've got all of the new dads working together.
Yeah. How about this? It's the Dad's Hour here on
Yes,
K-Ref.
it is.
Connor Pasby's running the YouTube stream behind the scenes for us. And we are streaming on YouTube every single day here on Locked In. So Florida Team Takeover Day, Josh, this is one program that, if we're going to focus on recruiting here off the rip, this is one school with which Oklahoma has had some pretty conspicuous recruiting battles over the years. They've gone toe-to-toe for quite a few, as you would expect, right? Even before Oklahoma was an SEC program, even before they were conference foes, Oklahoma and Florida were very much, for many years, within the same tier of college football. And so they were pursuing a lot of the same players. They were fishing in the same talent pools. And so I would love to know on the First Liberty Bank text line, is there a memorable OU Florida recruiting battle that sticks out in your memory? The ones I can remember The ones I can remember include Nick Evers and Jaden Gibson, whom OU flipped from Florida at the very tail end of the 2022 recruiting cycle. That had a lot to do with Dan Mullen's firing and Billy Napier's subsequent hiring. But those were 2 Florida commits that wound up flipping to OU. More recently, we saw Florida win a hotly contested battle for a top 100 prospect last cycle when they topped OU for Davian Groce, the talented wide receiver out of Lone Star High School in Texas. Sammy Omasigo, who's actually representing UCLA today at Big Ten Media Days, he came down to OU in Florida at the end of his recruitment. I remember being there on June 30th of 2022. For whatever reason, that date is just emblazoned in my brain. June 30th of 2022 was the day that Sammy Omasigo, in a little meeting room at his school in Crandall, Texas, committed to Oklahoma over Florida. As you think back, there any guys, whether they wound up at Florida or at Oklahoma, that you can distinctly recall the Sooners and Gators fighting over?
No, not necessarily. That's a good list that you compiled. Gibson obviously looked like somebody that was going to have a ton of promise here. Sammy O did some nice things.
He did.
But I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of battles between these two going forward, and I think John Sumrall will do a terrific job at Florida, and so that means you're going to have to deal with these guys as you try to get into the Sunshine State and pluck some of that top talent away, because I think there will be reasons to stick around and play for him moving forward.
Billy Napier, and I'm not going to sit here and say Billy Napier and Florida ignored their home territory on the recruiting trail, because they didn't ignore it, but you didn't feel as tight of a stranglehold from the Gators on the state of Florida and the recruiting trail therein over the course of the Napier era that you probably should if Florida is operating at peak efficiency as a football program. And Oklahoma benefited from that, certainly. Another guy in recent years that Florida was involved with that Oklahoma wound up pulling from the Sunshine State was Lewis Carter. Played a couple seasons here. Actually had a big year last season at UCF after transferring. Last cycle, Jake Kreul, who was Oklahoma's top signee. The backstory with Jake Kreul is that he's actually a Florida legacy. His dad played football at Florida, and he grew up in Florida. He's an Orlando kid. And yet Oklahoma was the school that managed to pluck Jake Kreul out of IMG Academy.
Arguably the most highly touted player in this class. I mean, a lot of people feel like, he's got a chance to be a big-time star. So, yeah, that was a huge recruiting win for OU.
Just over a month ago, Oklahoma had to fend off Florida to hang on to 4-star running back commit Keldrid Ben. He talked about visiting a ton of schools while still committed to Oklahoma. He talked a lot of noise about, and honestly, there were even some visits in the plans to places like Notre Dame and Oregon and USC and Texas. The one school that he actually visited, that he actually followed through on visiting while committed to Oklahoma, was Florida. He took an OV there at the end of May. So the Gators made a run at one of Oklahoma's finest, one of their top-ranked commits in the 2027 cycle. Oklahoma was able to hold the line. But certainly, Josh, I think as Oklahoma kind of starts to develop an SEC philosophy when it comes to recruiting, defined most specifically by the front office and their vision for what Oklahoma is, what it can be, and how recruiting and talent acquisition feeds into that, Florida's going to be one of those states and one of those regions where Oklahoma's always going to want to be strong. And Brent Venables, of course, has some really good connections down there. Having coached at Clemson for as long as he did, he recruited the state of Florida quite frequently and has certainly done so at Oklahoma. There are certain years where you see Sunshine State Sooners with more frequency than other years. It's not always a terribly regular thing. You're not seeing 4 or 5 Floridian transplants every single year. But I mean, just think about the talented Floridians that have made their mark at OU within the last decade. Nick Benito jumps readily to mind.
Great player.
Danny Stutzman was another Orlando area kid that boomed at Oklahoma.
EPL right now.
EPL right now from Tampa. Jaden Davis from South Florida. I mean, he didn't have a spectacular career at Oklahoma, but he had a good, solid one.
Sure. Yeah, no question. Was a solid player. Was so Florida wasn't really in the mix for EPL?
So he has an older brother that played at Florida. So, yes, they were in the mix, but the final two contenders in the race for his services were OU and UCF. Like, for months and months and months.
That's right.
It was a back and forth, and I think – no, that would have been the second year that Tyler and I were doing Locked In together. That was year 2 of this show. Gosh, we talked about Eddie Pierre-Louis and his recruitment for what felt like an eternity. After, like, June of that year. I think in June he took OVs to UCF and Oklahoma, and that was it. He had that final 2 all the way until December. Like, he didn't commit until the week before signing day. So it was back and forth for literally 6 months between OU and UCF.
You were very locked in on that recruitment.
The Sooners got it done. And thank goodness they did, because EPL has flourished at Oklahoma.
Figures to loom large this season and on the fortunes of this season.
Lane in California points out that Eric Stryker was a Tampa guy. You're absolutely right. He was. Some of the guys right now on this roster that hail from the state of Florida. One guy we didn't talk about from last cycle. A couple guys from the Jacksonville area. Jacob Curry at linebacker. Brian Harris from Jacksonville proper at defensive tackle. And so the state of Florida is a place where, is it ever going to become a primary focus for Oklahoma? I don't know about all that. I kind of think with the way things have been trending over the last year and a half, Oklahoma's kind of trying to get away from relying on one geographical vicinity, one region to provide the bulk of their talent. I mean, they're still recruiting the state of Texas heavy. They're still recruiting the state of Oklahoma heavy, but I don't see the Sooners going out of their way to establish a presence or to maintain that same presence, especially in Texas, that I have in recent years. And, we've seen them push out to the West Coast and recruit Cali and Arizona and Utah more heavily than they have in the past. And they've demonstrated, even in the couple years before Jim Nagy arrived, they've demonstrated that they'll go anywhere for talent. I think just because in the NIL era, geography matters less than it ever has before. OU signed Heath Ozida and Josiah Wagner from the state of Washington in the 23 cycle. Wyatt Gilmore, they went up to Minnesota for him in the 24 class.
That's right.
Phil Picciotti was a rural Pennsylvania kid. Like that. Logan Howland from New Jersey.
Yeah.
I mean, Trey Taliaferri from New Jersey, Oklahoma's quarterback commit in the 2028 cycle.
What do you chalk up that to? Because obviously, historically, Oklahoma kids and the connection to the state of Texas and to the Dallas, Fort Worth metro area, and none of this is to say that that's not still a big puzzle piece of Oklahoma's recruiting efforts, but if they are going a little bit more national, what do you assign that to? Why?
Well, we have to think about why geography matters less than it ever has before in recruiting. And that has to do with NIL. Because in the past, Josh, unless you were doing stuff under the table, unless you were putting the money in McDonald's bags, shout out Jeremy Pruitt, unless you were doing that nonsense, what's going to be important? What's going to be one of the important factors for most any 18-year-old kid as they get ready to go off to college and play football? They're going to want their family, they're going to want their parents to be able to come watch them play. That's not always financially or logistically feasible for every set of parents. It gets a lot easier in the NIL era when there is more than enough money flying around for you to be able to make travel accommodations for every single game for several family members of a given player.
That makes sense.
And so it is easier to go to every corner of the United States and pursue talent when you can promise them that we're going to have your folks taken care of. We're going to make sure they can come see you on Saturdays, and we can do that now. Whereas, you rewind 10, 20 years, and the reason why recruiting was much more localized was, and, I think certainly the advent of the internet and just digital technology in general, the availability of tape on Huddle at a, snap of a finger.
Easier to scout guys that aren't from.
That certainly made it easier to scout guys that aren't local, but that combined with the reality that you don't have to really worry about that inhibition, that obstacle. The fact and the reality of families and parents not being able to come watch their kid play if he's more than a few hours away on
That's interesting.
every single Saturday. I think that's why you're seeing less of a focus on localized recruiting.
And then, of course, it's Oklahoma. You got the interlocking
Exactly.
OU. There's a great brand
You have
that
a
you're
national
selling.
brand.
You-
Now, at the G6 level, those schools are still going to recruit hyper locally because they have to. They don't have as much money to throw around.
Right.
And, if you're, just to pick one example here, if you're a San Antonio kid and you have an offer from UTSA and the NIL on the table for you, I mean, let's be real here. At the G6 level, if you're a decent player, you're probably going to make $20,000, $25,000 for a season.
Which is not a bad not a bad chunk of change to play football.
It's not a bad chunk of change, but certainly not going to have you live in the high life. Your lifestyle's not going to be lavish.
Well,
but if
I would hope not.
Yeah, but I mean, if your options are that or like New Mexico State out, what is that, 8 hours west almost? A school like that, and then maybe a school like Tulsa where it's 8 hours north? When you're making that much money compared to the six-figure sums that guys get paid at the P4 level, your decision's probably going to be motivated less by the discrepancies in the checks because, I mean, is it really worth it to go play for an extra $5,000 a year at New Mexico State?
Unless you just love the staff.
Yeah, if you're just having to traverse so much ground to get to school and to get back home, and it's more difficult for your folks to come and see you, and, you have a community that you've grown up in. It makes a lot more sense for guys who are going the G6 route to stay local. It makes a lot more sense for those programs to recruit local. But when you're Oklahoma and the lowest paid guy on scholarship for you is still going to be making more than probably 50 to 60% of G6 players out there, if not more, you're not bound by the traditional constraints that geography creates.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just one more way that, this current age of college football has changed things.
Puerto Rican student on the text line says, incoming Doug from Norman, crapping all over Phil Picciotti text. I should have known better. Every single time I mention Phil Picciotti, every single time I so much as mention his name, we get a Doug text. We'll see if it comes during the break. 405-651-3439. That is the First Liberty Bank text line. Hey, what are you guys curious about? You want to reminisce on recruiting battles? I want to talk about OU's recruiting philosophy, whether now or in the years to come. You want to start talking about fall camp, which kicks off a week from today. You want to start getting juice for the 2026 season? Let's do it. You let us know on the First Liberty Bank text line again, 405-651-3439. Parker Thune, Josh Helmer, we'll be right back with you here on The Ref, the home of Sooner fans.
This is your home for Sooner fans. The Ref Sports Radio Network.
Good times are calling your name at the Showplace Theater with acts like Allison Krauss and Union Station, September 25th. Don't miss Foreigner, October 2nd. Brett Young, October 16th. And Bare Naked Ladies, October 23rd. Riverwind is OKC's favorite casino experience.
They don't want to hire you because your paper might say Oklahoma School for the Blind.
I was just completely homebound because I was always too afraid to go outside. I want to be a productive member of society, and that's what DRS has given me.
They offer you opportunities to getting a job, helping you learn how to advocate for yourself, find the best way to try living your life in the fullest way possible.
Oklahoma and DRS has been the biggest blessing in my life.
See me.
And not my disability.
A summer bug can turn a great day into a sick day fast. Whether it's a heat-related illness, a cough, or a sports accident, Norman Regional's urgent cares and walk-in clinics are here when you need us. With convenient locations in Norman, Moore, and Goldsby, you can get expert care for non-emergency illnesses and injuries without an appointment. Skip the long wait and get back to enjoying your summer. Visit a Norman Regional urgent care or walk-in clinic today. Book online at normanregional.com or just walk right in.
Mike Steele here for Lasher Home Comfort Systems, your trusted home comfort experts in the Oklahoma City metro area. Tim Lasher and his team have more than 130 years of combined experience. They recognize a significant number of homeowners live with inadequate home comfort systems. They specialize in diagnosing your home system issues while providing more efficiency and reducing your utility costs. As an authorized dealer of American Standard, Tim can service your residence or business. Call Tim and his team at 405-579-3113. Lasher Home Comfort Systems.
For over 30 years, CertaPro Painters has been part of countless memories. Every wall tells a story, and we've been proud to help write them. We are more than just your local painters, with care, craftsmanship, and certainty. From the first brushstroke to the final smile, our promise is simple. Your home, beautifully painted and worry-free. CertaPro Painters, that's painting happy. Get started today at CertaPro.com. Each CertaPro Painters business is independently owned and operated. Contractor license and registration information is available at CertaPro.com.
Are you looking to take strokes off your golf game this summer? Tyler McComb is here for Land Run Links, the best golf simulator in Oklahoma City. The Summer Swing Pass is here. For $129 a month, you get 1 hour a day to drill down your game. Work on wedges, irons, or play a full round on thousands of courses around the world, rain or shine. Or take advantage of the summer rates, just $35 an hour Monday through Friday until noon, or $60 Friday evenings through the weekend. Visit landrunlinks.com and book today.
You are deeply in love and you want to get married. Obviously, you're going to need an engagement ring, and you may be exploring online the multitude of choices that you have available. You don't really want to ask your friends for advice because you don't want to divulge your secret. So who do you turn to? I'm Tim Lewis, and my brother and I started Lewis Jewelers more than 48 years ago, and we still own it today. But did you know that most of the corporate jewelry stores are owned by only one or two companies? For instance, Zales, Gordon's, Diamonds Direct, Jared's, Kay's, James Allen, Blue Nile, and many others are all owned by one large company. So if you think you're actually shopping around, you are not. To get a truly better value, you need to compare us at Lewis Jewelers. The big boys simply have more money to spend on advertising so that you won't compare us at Lewis Jewelers. Visit us at Lewis Jewelers on I-35 and more. Then you'll be glad to tell your friends. It came from Lewis Jewelers.
It's locked in here on the ref. Parker Thune and Josh Helmer with you, hanging out on a Wednesday afternoon. To the first Liberty Bank text line we go, 405-651-3439. WF Sooner asked, is the staff still perusing any 2027 guys, or have they moved on to 2028 guys? Okay, quick summary. In case you're brand new, in case you don't follow recruiting, Oklahoma's got 27 commits in the 2027 cycle. It's a whale of a class as it is, Josh. Most years, that would be a pretty sizable class.
Yep.
By the general P4 standards, as far as just critical mass, sheer quantity. However, Oklahoma, like every other school, is in a situation where they're building to 105 scholarships. This offseason, we found out that the limit for scholarships was increasing from 85, which had been the number forever, as long as I can remember, to 105. So the limits used to be 120 players to a roster, 85 of which could be on scholarship. Now the limits are 105 players to a roster, but all of them can be on scholarship. Now, here's what that does not mean. That does not mean that walk-ons are going to cease to exist. That does not mean that Oklahoma has to roster 105 scholarship players. In fact, I've been told pretty definitively from within that they're more likely not going to roster 105 players this year or for several years to come, just because it doesn't make sense. If you were to rank every player on the roster in terms of sheer value, 85 to 105, once you get down to guy number 90, guy number 95, Josh, it's almost not worth it anymore to pay $40,000, $50,000 a year to somebody who's literally never going to see the field than it is to just kind of pool that money together from the bottom 10% of that roster and commit it to a transfer edition or a big-time recruit that can seriously improve your bottom line as a program. And so Oklahoma's building in the direction of 105 scholarships. Right now, the number's 90-something. It's going to go up again this coming offseason, but I don't think it'll get to 105 in advance of the 2027 campaign. It may not get to 105 for a while. Inflation's hitting hard everywhere, and that certainly holds true in the college football talent acquisition market. And so that's the reason why the class is going to be a bit heavier for Oklahoma in the 27 cycle. Yes, they have 27 already on board, but I have said many a time, Josh, and I'll continue to say it, I think OU will wind up signing north of 30 players.
Interesting. So, not done in summation there on 27. Who do you view as legitimately still in the mix for Oklahoma? And just real quickly, the NFL side, you're in that point right now of training camp to where in NFL training camps there's 90-man roster limits, and then, oh, by the way, guess what happens? There's a 53-man roster when they get to the cut down, and you've got about a 15-man practice squad. So, and maybe it's not an eye for an eye, apples to apples comparison here, but basically that's what roughly 70 players that NFL teams carry. So it's not shocking to hear that to get it from what has been 85-man rosters to, kind of gradually get to 105 is just that. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But 27, still in the mix with a couple of names?
Well, that's the thing. There will be names. As of right now, I don't think there are names. Like, if you asked the Oklahoma coaching staff or a member of the front office, like you gave them truth serum, who are the 4 or 5 guys you guys are looking to sign between now and December? I don't know that they would have a hard and fast, cut and dried short list. I think there are a bunch of guys that are kind of tangentially on their radar. And based on how things go over the first 3 to 4 weeks of the high school season, they're going to make decisions throughout September and maybe October as to who they seriously pursue. This is not uncommon. This is something that we see every single year, but I think it's being underscored and highlighted a little bit more here in the 27 cycle because we've gotten to a point in the calendar where until those evals start to happen, Oklahoma's work is pretty much done. Like they're not actively waiting on a verdict from any uncommitted targets in the 27 cycle.
Gotcha.
All of their official visitors have committed somewhere, whether OU or other schools. And so until they get the chance to get a sense of who's really popping off on the senior tape come September or October, there's just not going to be all that much to discuss as far as 2027 recruiting goes. Now, you think about some of the great late additions that Oklahoma has made over the years. I think maybe the most shining, conspicuous example of somebody that fits this bill would be Taylor Wine back in November of 2022. That was Oklahoma's pivot when Colton Vasek decommitted.
Gosh,
but
what a great pivot it's wound up being.
No doubt. But, I mean, you rewind to last cycle, for instance. Some of the additions that Oklahoma made down the stretch included Jacob Curry, who really, really became a high-level target with his senior tape. I mean, he chose OU over Ohio State, over Florida State. He had a Miami offer towards the end. Like, he had some of the big brands in college football chasing his services, and Oklahoma won out for him. Zizi Okafaleze was somebody that they didn't offer until the 1st of September last year. And he literally, quite literally, committed on the spot when he got the offer from Oklahoma. Emmett Jones called him, and as soon as Emmett said the words, "You've got an offer to the University of Oklahoma," Zizi was like, "All right, I'm coming. Like, let's do this." And so
that's awesome.
That's always fun, especially for an in-state kid. Who else? Christian Moore was obviously a very, very late pickup. The Sooners worked overtime throughout the fall to execute the flip of Jaden Petit from Wisconsin. Jasir Rogers And this right here, Josh, is an avenue worth exploring in a little bit more detail because Jasir Rogers is the perfect example of, I think, what Oklahoma is going to be on the lookout for this fall. What happens every year in college football? By midseason, we see 3 or 4 Power 4 programs either move on from a head coach or everybody realizes, okay, their firing is imminent.
Yeah.
And last year,
or just your feelings on the school, right?
Yeah.
Changes.
Well,
you see the direction.
Exactly. Luke Fickell didn't get fired at Wisconsin, but Jaden Petit saw more than enough to render the judgment that, okay, I can't go there.
Right.
I can't be a Wisconsin Badger with how shaky things are up there moving forward. But by mid-October last year, UCLA had kicked Deshaun Foster to the curb. Penn State had fired James Franklin. Virginia Tech was done with Brent Pry, just to pick a few examples. But the Penn State one was the one that really shook things up because nobody really saw that coming. Do you remember that? Like when James Franklin got fired.
Yeah, he wasn't on hot seats going into last year.
No, that was, and even though they had just lost 3 straight games and dropped to 3-3, and they lost to UCLA, who I think was either winless or had maybe just won their first game of the year. When James Franklin got fired, that was seismic news across college football because that wasn't really on anybody's bingo board. It's like, okay, he's probably on the hot seat going into 2027 at this point. But no, Penn State paid him, what was it, like $70 million?
And we could see similar
to
situations.
Go away.
We could see similar situations this year that you just don't know.
And I will never forget the day that James Franklin got fired. And everybody knows at a school like that, when the head coach gets fired, it's open season on the recruits. The day that happened, I got a text from an individual who shall not be named within the Switzer Center who said, "Oh, Penn State's got a nice wide receiver. We might like this kid." It was Jasir Rogers. 3 weeks later, he was committed to Oklahoma. They offered him later that day. They got him on campus for an official visit, I think 2 weekends thereafter, and it was done, and he was a Sooner. And so that's the type of thing, Josh, that you can count on. You just don't know where it's coming from. Like somebody is going to start really slow out of the gate and fire their head coach.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's going to be a bunch of players on the open market that were committed to that school but are suddenly looking around. You just don't know who that's going to be sitting here in July.
And
nobody could have imagined it would be Penn State last year, but it worked out nicely for Oklahoma because they got a dynamic wideout that might play a little bit for him here in 2026 as a true freshman.
Sounds like they've been really impressed with Rogers. I mean, obviously they liked him to offer him so quickly, but sounds like he's impressed early here. And then the other factor in that, Parker, is, okay, which jobs potentially open up, and is there a player at said school that Oklahoma was previously in on or that they like or they have a need at that position group? So, but that's probably going to present itself again. If could this lend itself to this next recruiting class being larger again for Oklahoma? I mean, do you foresee a scenario where Oklahoma looks at it, they've got a couple of open spots in 27. I know you like the class to get larger than 30, but does Oklahoma maybe get to a point to where the dominoes just don't fall a certain way to where they say, okay, well, we've also got the transfer portal. We've also got the 2028 class. Could it unfold in a way to where the players that Oklahoma ends up liking are not in the 27 class?
Yeah, it's a possibility. I don't think it's a likelihood, and here's why. You're always going to spend more money in the transfer portal for a player of comparable talent than you are for somebody out of the high school ranks. And that's kind of why, you look at Oklahoma's offensive line class in particular in 2027, Josh. It's huge. They have 6 offensive line commits. They would like to have 7 or 8. And the reason being is because they found out when they hit the portal market this offseason, for tackles in particular, just how inflated that market has become. They paid a pretty penny for Imarian Harris, and they feel like he's going to be worth it. But when they looked around, I think a great example is Febechi Wiwu had a younger brother, Chimdia, I believe is his name. And he was on the market, and he had He had a couple real nice seasons at Stephen F. Austin at the FCS level. Good player, could have been a depth guy at Oklahoma, could have been a second stringer that, right off the bat at least, that became a starter at some point down the line. And OU had the relationship with the family. Fabechi loved his time at OU. That would have made a ton of sense, right? But there were several other Power 4 schools with offers on the table to that kid that just dwarfed, and I mean dwarfed, what Oklahoma could reasonably convince themselves he was worth.
Just couldn't justify joining that market.
Yeah.
Which, sometimes that's probably going to happen where you get, priced out, right? For lack of a better way of saying it, you just look at it and say, okay, we can't pay that price. Relative to, and you're probably not going to say this to a player, but based on what we're viewing the value as, that's just a little bit out of our range.
Uh-huh. Now, as we're looking at positions where an extra take could come into play for Oklahoma late in the 27 cycle, I think you kind of got to look at what they missed out on, who they missed out on in the very late stages. I say late stages. The later stages of the first portion of the recruiting calendar, spring/summer. They wanted Case Alexander from Washington. He chose Penn State. They wanted Corey Laga, the offensive tackle from Illinois. He chose Vanderbilt. They wanted Uhila Wolfgram, the talented edge rusher from the state of Utah. He chose to stay home and play his college ball at BYU. So those three positions specifically, I think those jump out at me more so than anything, more so than the rest, I should say, as spots where I could see Oklahoma mounting a serious charge and like kind of making it a point to go grab an additional player. I think another position where it makes a lot of sense for them to make the room to take another would be wide receiver, because at one point they had 3 wide receivers committed. Then they lost Trayvon Hall and they lost Amari DeJean. They got Milan Green, but you lose 2, you add 1, you're still 1 short of where you wanted to be. And so wide receiver, I think, is a position where Oklahoma is going to be keeping the antenna up.
Sure. And
just in case.
Just looking at that position group, perceived starters, definitely Satania, but Harris as well coming over. I mean, you're looking to replace starters there next year. So that means if you replace the starters, and maybe you've got those guys on campus that you like a lot.
That's what you hope.
We continue to hear positive things about Manny Choice and others, and hopefully we see those results this fall that, okay, they've taken a stride here, and you feel that, okay, you've got some starters in-house, but that also means you got to replenish that depth, whether it be starters that you go find in the high school ranks or via the transfer portal. So I would agree with you that wide receiver feels like an obvious position that Oklahoma would like to replenish.
Yeah, and, speaking of the offensive line, names that are on the come-up, I mean, they really, really like Deacon Schmidt. They love Noah Best. I love Noah Best. I think that's your starting center next year. I think he is your next starting center after Jake Michaela. But I look at Cooper Hackett coming in, and he's probably not a year 1 guy, not because he isn't really talented, he certainly is, but because next year is going to be Michael Fasusi's junior year. And it's pretty well understood that as long as Michael Fasusi is here, he is Oklahoma's starting left tackle.
Yeah, going to be tough to supplant him.
But Caden Penny, especially given the reality that he could pretty much slot in at any of the 5 positions on the offensive line, I think there could be a path. I think there could be a window for Caden Penny to get on the field year 1 at Oklahoma. And
where at?
I would think if I had my druthers, I would play Ryan Foje at guard. I think that's where it makes the most sense to play him. However, I can certainly see a world where Imarian Harris graduates after the season and Ryan Foje goes to the staff and is like, hey, I want to play tackle. I want to go back to right tackle. Make more money there in the long term in the
Indeed.
NFL. Like, makes sense, right? Okay.
Financially,
and he's
no
good
doubt.
enough to do it. He's good enough to do it. If that happens, depending on whether or not Heath Ozida is still hanging around, depending on how Oklahoma's existing depth looks on the interior, but like I would peg right guard to me. That is the spot that I would point to and say there's a very plausible scenario where there is a window right there for Caden Penny to slot in and make an immediate impact. And even if it's not a starting job in year one, why can't he be a super valuable sixth man off the bench? Kind of the way that Caden Green was as a true freshman in 2023, or Heath Ozida will be for this team.
Need a couple of swing linemen every year. Got to have them.
And Penny, gosh, man. For whatever reason, he doesn't get talked about nearly as much as Hackett and Osborne. I think just because he's kind of a quiet kid who doesn't put himself out there as much. But he is one bad dude.
Yeah, you're high on Penny.
Anybody who has watched the Bixby Spartans and really honed in on what 61 does on Friday nights, they can see, man, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. That dude's going to mess some people up at the next level. He is all that he is cracked up to be. 405-651-3439. This is Locked In here on the Ref. We have one more segment to go. Here with you on the home of Sooner fans, Josh Helmer, Parker Thune. Keep it right here. We'll be back.
This is your home for Sooner fans. The Ref Sports Radio Network.
Hey, it's Tyler McComas, and you know that friend who always says, I've got a guy for tickets, and then ghosts you the week of the game? Yeah, don't be that guy. Instead, call my buddy Mike Fletcher at Totally Tickets. Whether it's OU football, the Red River rivalry in Dallas, OKC Thunder games, or the biggest concerts, Fletch has you covered. Totally Tickets is locally owned by a proud Sooner, so keep your money local. Visit TotallyTickets.com, because the only thing worse than paying too much for tickets is watching the game from your couch while your buddies are sending you selfies from the 50-yard line.
The Oaks at Mustang is now leasing. Conveniently located on County Line Road and the Turnpike in Mustang, the Oaks has spacious 1- and 2-bedroom apartments with large walk-in closets, package lockers, and even a sparkling pool. The Oaks is leasing now, so you don't want to wait. Contact the Oaks and Mustang on their website at theoaksatmustang.com or call 405-927-2566 to be where everyone will want to be. 405-927-2566 or online, theoaksinmustang.com.
Football is almost back, and nobody's going to help you get your SEC fix in 2026 quite like the home of Sooner fans. With the Refs SEC Team Takeover, brought to you by Norman Hyundai. Drop the dog days of summer monotony with 3 straight weeks of the Refs SEC Team Takeover as we break down every SEC school from July 27th to August 14th, from 6A to 6P. For 15 straight days of all 15 conference foes with the Ref SEC Team Takeover, brought to you by Norman Hyundai. Whether you're buying new or used, start your car buying journey anytime at normanhyundai.com or stop by their beautiful new facility on the Mile of Cars in Norman. Norman Hyundai, servicing you and nothing else. That's the Ref's SEC Team Takeover. The Ref, the home of Sooner fans, and your home to be SEC ready.
Whatever the job, Warren Cat is here to help. Whether you're tackling a weekend project, managing a business, or running a large job site, you can count on Warren Cat for new and used equipment, rentals, parts, and expert service. With locations across Oklahoma and West Texas, our team is ready to help you find the right solution for your next job. Visit warrencat.com to learn more. Warren Cat, proudly serving our communities and a proud sponsor of OU Athletics.
Focus emphasizes the environment of the Hive House and the impact of the donation. For young adults with disabilities, high school graduation can feel like a sudden drop-off into isolation. But at Sun Hive Collective in Norman, the journey is just beginning. On our 20-acre Hive House campus, members find a place to grow, from tending gardens to building life skills. Our specialized care costs $85 a day. Your donation to the Pollinate the Hive Fund ensures no one is left behind. Visit sunhivecollective.com/donate and help us keep the hive humming.
We all make choices about alcohol. Kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, remind me about that party again?
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations, and they want honest answers in everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path, because when you talk, they hear you. Learn more at underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Chronic absenteeism is on the rise.
Sophia A. absent. Julio M. absent.
These absences are often due to the absence of crucial needs, like food, transportation, and healthcare.
Olivia H. absent. Preston L. absent.
But site coordinators from communities and schools connect kids to the resources they need so they show up prepared and ready to learn.
Jacob O. Present.
Visit communitiesandschools.org. Being present matters.
Final segment of Locked In here on the Ref, the home of Sooner fans. Josh Helmer in for Grayson Singleton today. I am Parker Thune. Back to the First Liberty Bank text line, 405-651-3439. Got any thoughts? Hit us with a text. A 405 listener inquired, are there any in-state wide receivers that might have a great senior season and earn an offer? Give us a couple of names. I mean, I'll keep it a buck. I don't look around the state right now and think, oh, yeah, like easy pickings on that one. There's a wide receiver that, if he has a huge year, could wind up on Oklahoma's radar. I mean, there are a few guys that, it's going to take an otherworldly kind of season, I think, to elevate to that level. And there's always a couple kids that just come out of nowhere. I think a great example of this phenomenon, Josh, going back a couple of years, is Taylor Heim. Nobody knew who Taylor Heim was his senior year. I mean, hyper-locally, sure, but Oklahoma was the only P4 offer he had, and it came late, even after his senior season, man. Most of his interest was within the lower rungs of the G6, G5 at that time. And Brent Venables and the Oklahoma staff found Taylor Heim's tape, loved it, pulled the trigger, got him on board, and, up until that knee injury that he suffered this spring, looked like he was on track to break into the rotation this year for Oklahoma. So he's a guy that's trusted the process, and it's paid dividends, but he was never a big-time name in the OK Preps ranks.
So as of today, not really a couple of names that jump out?
As of today, within the state, I would not say there are any wide receivers that I have kind of filed away as a watch again in a month or two type of guy to see what the tape looks like. I mean, it was very easy to make that call this time 1 year ago with Zizi Okafuleze. Like at this time in 2025, we all knew it. We talked about it frequently on this show. Like if Zizi Okafuleze's early season tape looks a certain way, yeah, you can pretty well expect Oklahoma to get involved there. And lo and behold, I think the season opener, he had like 13 catches for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like something just ridiculous. And it's like, okay, well, there it is. Like,
didn't take long.
Got to get him now. Got to get him now.
Hey, good for him, man. What a great story that you shared that, basically he committed on the spot when offered.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Good for him.
Yeah, it's a really cool backstory that he told to me for his commitment story. And it's you would have to dig way back in the archives now to find it. But he was basically, he said, I prayed for a sign. I prayed for the offer from Oklahoma to come on, whatever day. I think it was a Monday. He said, I just prayed that if it was meant to be at Oklahoma, that God would send that sign in the form of an offer on Monday. And Emmett Jones called me on Monday. I knew it was meant to be. And
wow.
So, and he,
cool.
He loved Oklahoma for Oklahoma. It wasn't just, oh, this just happened.
But someone of faith was praying about it, and it played out that way, and that's neat, man. Good for him.
Here's a hot take from Joe in Tulsa. I think Heath Ozida will be starting at guard this year. Foje backing up at tackle and guard. I mean, look, I love Heath Ozida. Program guy, man. 15 collegiate starts under his belt at multiple different positions. He's been incredibly valuable for Oklahoma. I just don't think he's Ryan Foje, and I just don't think he's Eddie Pierre-Louis. If those two guys are healthy, those are your two starting guards. The starting five on the offensive line feels pretty clearly defined, and you know what? I think that's okay in Ozida's case because he is one of those guys that's hyper versatile and he can play multiple positions and has played multiple positions. And what are the odds, Josh? I mean, realistically, what are the odds that you're getting through an entire football season in the Southeastern Conference without losing an offensive lineman, without losing a starter at some point for some length of time.
Yep.
Oklahoma's going to need Heath Ozida. I don't know whether it'll be week 1 or week 10, but they're going to need him at some point.
Be it a game, be it a couple of games, be it a quarter, a half, you're going to probably, need more than what you've got in terms of your starting lineman going in. That's just the nature of playing those positions.
A 918 listener asked, is Daniel Yebbett a possible wide receiver target? Daniel Yebbett, for those unfamiliar, 4-star athlete out of Yukon, Oklahoma, a Yukon Miller, committed to TCU. If that offer from Oklahoma ever came, Daniel Yebbett he'd be headed to Norman. I don't think that's much of a question. But I just don't think Oklahoma sees him as a fit in the 2027 class. Great kid, man. Great work ethic. Excellent athlete. But they have their apprehensions about him at wide receiver. The cornerback class is 4 deep right now, so it doesn't make a ton of sense to throw him into the mix there. And then safety, I mean, maybe you could make it work at that spot, but who knows how naturally that transition would go down for a guy like Yebbett. And Oklahoma's in fine shape.
And what position does he want to play?
Exactly. I think he's committed as a cornerback to TCU. I think that's correct. A 405 listener asked, can Ozida play center? I do believe he's repped at center sparsely in the past on the practice field, but he's played both guard spots, and he's played a bit at right tackle, if memory serves. So basically everywhere but left tackle. Everywhere but left tackle, you could throw Heath Ozida into the mix, and he'd be okay. If you lost Jake Michaela at center, I would be interested to see how Oklahoma would react, because I think there's a real chance, Josh. And maybe this is just me and my agenda, because I've been pumping this kid up for a long freaking time now. But I know what they think in the building of him as well. And I wonder if they'd say, Noah Best, go show us what you got.
It's go time.
Uh-huh.
So if something were to happen to Michaela, Noah Best?
I almost hope so, like
if you've been singing the praises, I understand.
It's always, anytime you got to send a true freshman out there, anytime you're in a position to send a true freshman out there to play offensive line in the SEC, you're going to be a little apprehensive.
Well, sure.
For obvious reasons. But I think if Oklahoma needed Noah Best to play, he would be capable of playing.
Got to kick those training wheels off one day eventually anyway, so.
A 918 listener said Dom Forbes is the best receiver in the state. Yeah, Dom Forbes up at Sand Springs. He's a good receiver, no question. I would say amongst the uncommitted guys in the state, he is probably the best of the bunch at wide receiver. Is he going to be an OU guy right now? I don't think so. We'll see what that senior tape looks like. I mean, and he doesn't have any FBS offers as of now, I don't believe. Maybe a service academy or two. But the great thing about the way that Oklahoma operates is that they've shown this time and again in the past. And again, you go back to the example of Taylor Heim, just to pick one. They don't really care what the offer sheet looks like if they think you're a good player. I mean,
that's how they should operate.
Yeah, I mean, one of their very late additions, and you hate to call it late because it happened in June, which is the midpoint of the recruiting cycle. But, relative to the other additions that they made, the pickup of Milan Green was a pretty late coming one. And Milan Green's offer sheet at the time he committed to OU consisted of Northern Illinois, Arkansas State, Nebraska, and I think that's it.
If you trust your scouting and you trust your evals, you don't get caught up in what other folks think about a player.
Nope. Especially because, as we have seen time and again, in the 18 months since Jim Nagy got to town, oftentimes he and his scouting staff, they're first through the wall on a kid that turns out to be a big freaking deal.
And then guess what? Other folks follow suit, and after an Oklahoma offer, a bunch of other folks want to jump into that recruiting mix as well.
Josh Helmer, thanks for hanging for the last hour, man.
Enjoyed it, man. Let's do it a couple more days this week. What do you say?
We sure will. We sure will. Are you here Thursday and Friday on the show as well?
I'm hanging out the next couple of days, man.
Okay, beautiful. Well, in that case, let's run it back tomorrow. In the meantime, folks, don't go anywhere because coming up next here on The Ref, you get 3 more hours of me talking Thankfully, it won't be just me. Thankfully, it's never just me. I've never had to do solo radio.
Folks would they would still enjoy that, and you do a great job.
No,
nice to have a friend, though.
You don't have to pretend, Josh. I'd get tired of hearing myself talking if I so much as had to do 1 hour of solo radio. I'd be like, I don't want to hear my own voice anymore. Fortunately, my voice won't be the only voice you hear coming up on The Rush. But excited to jump into it. 3 more hours ahead here on The Ref, the home of Sooner fans. Locked In will return tomorrow, same time, same place, with me and Josh. Till then, take it easy.